Well, I want to invite you to close your eyes for a moment and imagine the scene that I'm about to describe for you. It is Saturday morning, and little Bobby and Johnny, two brothers, are visiting Grandma's house for the weekend. And they're all in Grandma's kitchen together, making a very special treat for breakfast: blueberry pancakes. The griddle is hot, the blueberries are fresh, and the pancake mix, it's from scratch. Can you smell it? Now, the first few pancakes are about to come off the griddle. The boys' mouths are watering, and they begin to argue over who's going to get the first stack. And Grandma gently steps in and says, "Now, boys, stop fighting. Suppose you were Jesus. What would you do? You would give the first stack to your brother, wouldn't you?" The boys get quiet for a minute. And then Bobby turns to his brother and says, "Hey, Johnny, you be Jesus today." You can open your eyes. I love that parable, but it always makes me hungry for blueberry pancakes, unfortunately. But can't you just see it? I mean, like, there's this one brother, and he's working it out in his mind. Like, his grandma's urging him to be like Jesus. And Bobby must have thought, it's like, oh, okay, sure, I'll be like Jesus. I'll be the hero here. I'll do what I'm supposed to do. But then he must have realized, wait a minute, that has a consequence. I have to give up something. He realized that in Grandma's kitchen, he wasn't going to get the first stack of blueberry pancakes if he wanted to be like Jesus. And when Jesus called his first disciples on the beach that one day long ago, they dropped everything and they followed him. Because to have a first century rabbi invite you to follow him, that was a tremendous honor. I mean, maybe we can say it like this: the wow factor for those first followers of Jesus coming to them, the wow factor would have been off the charts. And that wow factor really sort of kept going, didn't it? I mean, there was this steady flow of miracles. Jesus is winning all these theological debates with his enemies. There are healings, and he's casting out demons. Thousands get fed. Water gets walked on. Storms get calmed. I mean, really, what's not to like about following Jesus here? The disciples were probably thinking, this is great. Just keep going, Jesus. We're right behind you. This is awesome. But at some point, that wow factor started to fade. And somewhere along the line, their expectations of what it meant to follow Jesus, it didn't start to match up as well with what Jesus was actually teaching. As Jesus starts to talk about his death, his followers begin to question him. In fact, at one point, Peter takes him aside and doesn't just question him, he rebukes him. And Peter's response to that rebuke famously says, "Get behind me, Satan." Was Peter still so caught up in the wow factor that he wasn't able to hear Jesus' version of Messiah over his own version? The wow factor had faded, and now the risk factor was becoming a reality. Jesus' version of Messiah, which, by the way, let's be honest, it's the only version that matters, right? Jesus' version of Messiah was emerging more and more as they drew near to Jerusalem and this Holy Week. His message was bringing all this hope and life to those who were on the edges and the marginalized of society. But that was actually posing a threat to those who were in power. His tactics and his message was so counterintuitive, and it was upside down from any of the other kings that had come along the line or any of the other authority in that area. I mean, seriously, think about it. How do you fight when your weapons are love and compassion? Like, how does the whole, the last shall be first and the first shall be last, how does that actually play out? How does vulnerability lead to victory? How does weakness become powerful? How does being a nonviolent servant leader destroy the violent occupiers of the Roman Empire? Exactly how do the meek inherit the earth? And from our gospel reading tonight, how does something that dies bear fruit? How do you lose your life and save it in the same breath? So these disciples, they want to follow Jesus, clearly. These Greeks come to the disciples saying, we want to see Jesus. But all of this death talk, it's getting a little bit much, Jesus, you know? I mean, he starts to have all these predictions about how he's going to die, and this realization is starting to set in for his followers. What does this mean for us? What are the risk factors here? Like, we're not just talking about blueberry pancakes anymore. And so one by one, Jesus' followers, they start to betray him or fall asleep while they're supposed to be praying or deny him or just run away and desert him. Like, the risk factor, it's too great. It was too difficult. Their expectation of what the Messiah had to look like, it was too ingrained in their hearts and their mind. Because to follow Jesus all the way, to see the betrayal and the imprisonment that's going to happen on Maundy Thursday, to witness the torture and the execution that's going to happen on Friday, Good Friday, to experience then the loss and death and the absence of God on Holy Saturday. I mean, no one wants to do that. I don't want to do that. And even though there's this powerful call to follow Jesus that far, the risk factor is high. I mean, it means we have to come face to face with giving up what our expectations of Messiah is supposed to look like. It means that we need to ask God to remove our version of Jesus and replace it with God's version. It means we might actually have to betray what we believe about Jesus. We might need to fall asleep to that. We might need to deny what we've thought. We might need to die to the version that we have and invite God to give us God's version of Messiah. So our invitation tonight is to embrace the risk and to follow Jesus through Holy Week and into Good Friday and beyond. Amen.